Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program 2, where we are currently working on designing the most complicated mission we've done in Kerbal Space Program 2, and that of course is this Eve mission. Now we're starting at the beginning, and by which I mean taking off from Eve and achieving orbit, which is kind of the end of the mission in a weird sort of way. But that's what we're starting with, and we're getting very close at this point. Last episode, we achieved a significant altitude. We don't know how high that altitude would have gone because this burned up. We have a heat issue. So I'm going to remove this nose cone. And I had already considered that we should probably have a docking port here, which we're going to do. And then I'm going to duplicate that. We're going to invert that. And then we're going to do this number. And then I want to put in a larger nose cone here in the hopes that the aerodynamics in this game are sufficiently clever to realize that this is blocking for this. Now, we could put a heat shield in here, but heat shields cause huge amounts of drag, and I would like as little drag as possible here. So, let's put this out on Eve and see if this solves the heating issue. Hopefully it does. And if it does, great. That's absolutely fantastic, and we'll see how far this thing goes. So let's put this out on the pad, and then we'll, of course, have to teleport it over to Eve and just see how she flies. It'll be very interesting, for sure. Okay, so this is a weird camera angle, but whatever. Let's just move this on over to the surface of Eve. Surface Eve, there we go. Place it somewhere over here. Altitude of about 400 meters or so is the depth of Eve's oceans of Explodium. So with any luck, that should be in the Explodium and on the day side. Let's see what we've got. This is definitely Explodium, and this is definitely day side. We're a little high up. And are we still sinking? The answer is yes, we are. So that problem is currently unsolved. Noted. Well, let's get out of here. Lighting up the engines. And I want to bring us on over to be out here. Now, this is going into a polar orbit, which is not ideal. We'll want to go into an equatorial prograde orbit in reality. But for now, I want to park us right about here. We're just holding altitude. Okay, we are going up a little bit. Okay. There we go. Now we're gaining some altitude. So I want to just hold here for now and gain as much altitude as we can. I want to see if this solves the heating issue up here. And if it does, how far we end up going. Because it's theoretically possible, based on that last test that we did, it's theoretically possible that this might achieve orbit. And if it achieves orbit going in this polar direction rather than an equatorial direction, equatorial prograde, which would be 90 degrees, then that is indicative that we achieve orbit in a harder than expected environment in which to achieve orbit. So that would be absolutely phenomenal. Let's just build up as much speed as we can. And we're going to punch up through this cloud layer as much as possible. We're already a kilometer up. And we're definitely building up a good amount of speed here. We are, of course, going to be ditching these large engines very soon. But I'm just keeping an eye on our heating at the moment and our overall surface speed, which is currently 200 meters per second. Which is decent. Okay. Big tanks are gone. Get out of here, big tanks. Speed is still increasing. And of course, we're going to lose our first round of engines pretty quickly. But we are passing up through the cloud layer now. Keeping an eye on that fuel gauge. About to lose a set of engines here. There we go. A bit awkward on the detachment, but it was clean. Okay. Still punching upward. We've got an apoapsis of about 5 kilometers at this time. Excellent. We're going to ditch another one of these sets of tanks very shortly. They're burned out. We're not going to carry that weight anymore. That was a very awkward detachment indeed, but it was clean. Okay, we'll take it. And we're just continuing to punch as upward as we can. It's getting further and further out, that apoapsis. We're currently 13 seconds. And keep in mind, we've not tapped into our hydrogen fuel at all. We didn't in the last test. We never made it quite to that point before we ran into aerodynamics issues. So this is looking pretty decent. Apoapsis is crossing 10 kilometers at this time. And currently, these wings are not detachable. I'm not sure if I want to make them detachable or not. It might not matter. We'll see what this ends up looking like. If we need more thrust on the hydrogen engine in order to achieve orbit, then I might make them detachable. But for now, I'm not convinced it's 100% required. Note how our surface velocity is still increasing. It was around this time before, yeah, we've got this oscillation picking up. That was the same thing that happened before. So that is definitely non-ideal. It was around this time we started to see heating issues as well. So we might want to turn down the amount of gimbal in these sets of engines a little bit. Because we're clearly over-gimbaled at this point. Okay, let's see if we're clear here. We are. Excellent. And we're still continuing to increase our speed. We're seeing no heating issues as of right now. We currently have an apoapsis of about 30 kilometers. Now we have nosed down a little bit, and I want to nose this right back up. That seems to have also solved our oscillation, which is intriguing. And let's see just how high up we get. Now we do have a heat gauge building up here. That's noted. It was definitely later. 50 kilometer apoapsis. Keeping an eye on the heat situation here. The heat situation is better than it was previously. Okay, we have to cut the throttle. Heat is too high, so we have to coast for a little bit here. 73 kilometer apoapsis is absolutely noted. I'm going to park us on prograde. There we go. And we're letting that heat die down as we coast up a bit through the atmosphere. Now we're going to continue punching through the atmosphere, and we're out of fuel here. So we actually maybe could have continued burning that. That's noted. But look at this. We're at 55, 54. So this is going down at this point. That's noted. That means that we need to continue to burn. The question at this point is, do we have sufficient thrust to get ourselves into orbit? We definitely have sufficient fuel, I think. All we need to do is get this into orbit. We don't need to get this home. I have a different plan for getting us home. So we're just holding prograde here. Our apoapsis is out of the atmosphere at this juncture. That looks excellent. But I'm not convinced that we're actually achieving orbital velocity here. And that's the core issue at this point, potentially. There are a couple of things we could potentially do about that. We're now in the vacuum of space. We can see the apoapsis is 30 seconds away, and we're just going to continue to push up here. I think we need somewhere around 3 kilometers per second, and this music seems really loud. Hang on. Let's put it at like 30. Okay, something like that. I think we need something like 3 kilometers per second in order to orbit Eve. Let's see what that ends up looking like. Do we have the thrust to weight on our nuclear engine to achieve orbit with this? If we don't, we can make the wings detachable. That would boost our thrust to weight somewhat. We can also not do that small coast, but I don't think we have what it takes here. So I'm going to nose us up a bit here, because we clearly need to be counteracting gravity more. Here we can see that we are raising our apoapsis. We know that that would be the case because we have a higher than 1.0 thrust to weight ratio at this point. So let's bring this apoapsis up to somewhere around 100 kilometers is still a pretty low orbit here. But let's put it somewhere around here. We've got about 1 minute to the apoapsis, so we have the thrust to achieve this. We're going to be in orbit here. This is a done deal. This is guaranteed. Yeah, time going up. Beautiful. We'll just burn here till like 150. Yeah, as expected, this is indeed a done deal. So this is fine. This is completely viable from here. We know for a fact that this can get from a dead stop on the surface of Eve into orbit with 2,600 delta V remaining. Beautiful. Now we need to land it. Okay, so we're going to revert that back to the VAB. We're doing this in kind of reverse order, right? So that honestly would have almost enough DV to make it back home. There are a couple of things that I want to modify here. Specifically, I want to make it so that the interior vectors have basically no gimbaling on them, or very little. So I want to turn their gimbal down to like 10% gimbal on these interior ones. So gimbal limit goes down to like 10, and that should be mirrored due to the symmetry. Yes. And then these out here, I'm going to turn down to about 50% gimbal. Just to get rid of that oscillation. That will propel us a little bit further as well. Heating is still a small concern, no doubt about that. But honestly, I don't think we need to make the wings detachable. We could do it. We could do it. But I don't think it's strictly speaking necessary. Now, how do we want to enter this contraption? That's a heck of a question. Okay, I have a wild concept building up in my head right now. So what this would end up potentially looking like, and this is mildly insane, but what this would end up looking like is we would put in some decouplers here. So large size decoupler here, here, and here. Then we would put ourselves some expandable heat shields, inflatable heat shields. So that would be these guys. Now these don't expand nearly as much as they did in KSP-1. So this is all the further it goes. We might have to put some additional inflatable heat shields on it, and I would want this to be in mirror symmetry. Thank you very much. So that would end up going... Apparently mirror symmetry... Oh, this went back. Mirror symmetry, please. It doesn't want to put this on in mirror symmetry. Okay, that's fine. So this re-entry, I think, would be problematic. Specifically because I have a feeling that this is not going to do the trick. We're going to have engines burning off over here and over here in the center. We may even lose the wings. We can run a quick test of it. And then as far as the parachutes go, these parachutes are likely, in my opinion, not going to be enough to bring us to the ground. So let's bring the parachutes all the way down to, like, here. Here. Okay. Now, as far as how we're going to actually bring this into the atmosphere, that's an interesting question. I haven't gotten there yet. Okay, I want to retract these for now. Apparently we can't retract them. Interesting. This might be because I duplicated it with the heat shield extended. That might be bugged. Let's get rid of these, and let's duplicate this with the heat shield retracted. Like that. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to save this, and we're going to put this out on the pad. Our mission now is not to take off and make it back to orbit. Our mission at this point is, in fact, to get from orbit down into splashdown. The real question, of course, is one of floating. But maybe with the heat shields on here, maybe we would float. I don't know. It'd be kind of weird. For sure. Well, let's put this out on the pad, and we're going to have to... We would need a separate deorbiting solution here, and we'll come to what that ends up being, I think, later. But for now, what we need to do is we need to make sure that we're going to survive the entry. So we're going to put ourselves in orbit of Eve, and this is going to be basically as low as we can here. What does the advanced mode give us? Okay. Noted. Let's just teleport ourselves into orbit of Eve here. Okay. And for the purposes of deorbiting, I want to get ourselves into a retrograde orientation here, which this is going to be very difficult to turn at this point, but that is understood. And I also want to, I mean, we're kind of upside down at this moment, but I don't mind that much about that. I want to activate these two engines. Whoa, hang on. Not right now. I want to activate this engine and this engine. And we're going to use those as temporary deorbiting engines. That is not going to be what we're going to be using in actuality as we look to bring this down. So let's just burn these two engines. Actually, that is causing us to pitch because they are off-center. So I'm going to activate these engines as well. Okay, and we're going to bring our periapsis down to somewhere around here or so. I should have actually put us into unlimited fuel mode. This is probably too low at this point, but I should have probably put us into unlimited fuel mode so that I don't taint our test with different amounts of weight than what we'll actually have. That is noted for the future, but for now, let's just extend out our heat shields. To be clear, that is the wrong heat shield. What? Oh, this one. Okay. To be clear, I do not expect this to be a successful test. I expect to see engines blowing up as we come in here. Okay. So let's warp this around. And we're going to have a hard time holding attitude here. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. So holding attitude is going to be a bit of a problem for us. That said, we are managing to steer our way around. Okay. I really, really don't expect this to work well, to be clear. I really don't expect this to work well. This is a first iteration on the re-entry. I fully expect that we're going to need additional heat shields here and here. And we'll see what all that looks like. But for now, let's get ourselves into the orientation, which actually we've done a good job of getting ourselves over to the retrograde orientation. It's a little dark here, so we're having a bit of a hard time seeing exactly what's going on. But that's not necessarily shocking. And of course, we're in 4x time acceleration right now as well. So keep that in mind too. Okay, so we're trying a bit of aero brake here. I don't expect that this is going to be particularly successful. Let's keep this at 1x for the moment so that the frame rate is a wee bit better. And how much fuel did we actually burn? That is an interesting question here. So let's go into the resource manager and go into Methalox. Where are the tanks that we burned from? Here. Okay. So 1.1 tons of... This is a fairly insignificant amount of fuel that we burned. So the test is only very mildly tainted here. That's noted. So we are, of course, continuing to decelerate here. We're going to be dipping down to about 75 kilometers. Eve's atmosphere is incredibly thick. And I'm wondering what we're over right now. Seas? Okay. Eve's atmosphere is incredibly thick, and that means that aerobraking is extremely easy. Parachutes are highly effective as well. I am hoping that between these heat shields and the parachutes, that we're able to bring this down quickly and safely. However, I do expect there to be issues, because we have significant gaps in our heat shield here. So we'll see how that goes. We're still dipping down here. As you can see, we are still accelerating as we head towards our periapsis. So that is absolutely expected. We should actually be in physics warp here, because we're going to want to cruise forward a little faster. This is going to take a little bit. And there's not much to see. It's dark. We're out of electric charge. Okay. This is actually a good thing. I want to know how aerodynamically stable we are here without electric charge. But in reality, we will have probably more electric charge here. This is somewhat inauspicious. Okay. So the reason why I say it's inauspicious is because we are currently flipping. We're flipping around to be nose first. Now, we know that we can maintain a fair amount of speed nose first. But we can't maintain this amount of speed nose first. So our aerodynamics are not intrinsically stable in this directionality. That's okay. I'm not super surprised about that. This is definitely going to be exploding. This is going to be a lot of explodium. We're going to go kaboom. I'm pretty sure. Now, we have no way to regenerate electric charge at this moment, and that's fine. That's not really the test. But this thing definitely wants to passively flip around to be nose first. And that is something we'll need to fight. It worked well until we ran out of electric charge. That said, I'm a little surprised nothing blew up during that flip. We're not arresting the flip. It's continuing back around to retrograde. Definitely some heat gauges here. This is shocking. Our orbital velocity is still increasing at this point. So aerobraking with this much weight is definitely complicated. No doubt about it. And our main issue here appears to be electric charge. Noted. I'm just watching this bar here. I wonder if it'll blow up. It might. But it also might get in line and cool off. It should be fairly shielded by this point, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's going down. This is interesting. We're kind of holding attitude here, but we're going back now. And that means that this, on this next flip, is almost certainly going to explode. This isn't super surprising. Electric charge is the core issue here. So let's revert this back. And we could put in some sort of a mechanism that would be left behind, because I don't want to alter what our takeoff weight is. We could put in some sort of a mechanism that would be left behind and would give us more electric charge. So what that could end up looking like is something like just batteries that are installed in front of these. So we can detach this guy, and we could just put batteries here, and that would be reasonably fine. We could put, I don't think an XL would be perfect, but maybe like a large. Although this would expand big enough, theoretically, to protect an extra large. So that would be something like this, right? We can get rid of this guy, get rid of this guy. Attach here. We could even do a second one, just to make absolutely certain that we have enough electric charge to carry us down to the surface, or thereabouts. We got as far as we did there on 450 electric charge alone. So that is certainly noted. Now, as far as what a detacher here would look like, we would simply run a small engine back here. So this would have a decoupler here. I'd go with probably a medium. We'd have a decoupler here, and then we would have a small fuel tank here. We could even have this be methylox, with the idea being this is intended to deorbit us and get that re-entry started. So then this would be something along the lines of a poodle here. Like that. Cool. So, like I said, the intention behind that would be to deorbit us. So we can save this and put this out on the pad and run another test. But it is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm a little surprised we weren't seeing heating gauges from these engines. I wonder if they would be safe. We might be okay with just this. We'll see. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Atala, Ali Lee, Dark Horse, Xenocyte, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.